Hi, this is Patrick Van Hall. He's an industry thought leader with Kinaxis, and we're here to talk about vocabulary today. It just seems to me, Patrick, that some of the terms we're using in supply chain management, there's some new terms I think a lot of people don't know yet. And, it's not just knowing the vocabulary. I think these terms have some interesting concepts attached to them. So I thought maybe we would start with a term a lot of supply chain people know, which is sales and operations planning. Use that as our starting place. So maybe first, could you describe the difference between sales and operations planning, also known as S&OP, and integrated business planning?
It's a funny distinction because it depends on who you ask, of course. If you ask somebody who's failed at implementing S&OP, they might try it again and call it IBP. So there are instances where one is the same as the other. There are instances also where there's distinguishing levels of maturity. So a level 3 on a Gartner scale versus a level 5, perhaps. At the core, both of these are supply and demand reconciliation in their simplest form. And they're cyclical processes, and historically they've been sequential. So you start with a demand review, you have a supply review, you have some type of mid-management meeting, eventually it bubbles up to an executive level. If we go from the standpoint of the maturity level, is being able to integrate your business decisions into your supply chain behaviors. So we're at very much a point in time where supply chain can drive a lot of the value for the business, and we've seen how important they are to the overall success. What that means is that it's the ability to bubble up the most pertinent decisions, and not necessarily those that allow the executives to become bottlenecks, but those that are actually helping to shape the direction of the business going forward. And so that's when you're integrating your supply chain into your business decision making. And it's really putting supply chains in the position to say what they can and they can't do, to be able to be honest with their business partners across the board and help to shape some of the direction of the business going forward. We saw that with COVID. We saw that in a number of instances over the past few years where supply chains are using S&OP and IBP types of processes to really accelerate the learning curve and act quickly as they understand the information that's coming into them.
I think there's a nice transition from what you're talking about to a term that is newer, and I think is much less understood around the industry than S&OP. And that would be S&OE, Sales and Operations Execution. So maybe you could hit us with what that means.
Yeah, so supply chains have always been really good at saving the day, right? Bubblegum, duct tape, diving catches, all of those types of things. And so S&OE, you get a lot of perception of it is that it's that type of behavior where you're looking at what's in front of you, trying to make the decision. And it's coming up a little bit from that, but it's not quite to the level of a full-blown planning cycle. It's about how do you connect what orders you have in hand, for example, what supply you have available, what you expect to arrive very shortly, and how you're connecting those to really fulfill the things that need to be done in your business to get the customers what they want, where they want it, when they want it. And it's really that opportunity to look at things on a bit more of a shorter time horizon and really put it into that execution mindset. But ideally, it's also going to tie back into what your overall strategic directions are of your business. So it's not a disconnected process from those other types of processes. It's focused on the here and now, but it does dovetail into the others very nicely.
And Kinaxis is known for concurrent planning, along with a few other supply chain planning vendors. I think the idea of concurrent planning and sales and operations execution go together pretty well, right?
It does. Ultimately, you hear a lot about this idea of a single version of the truth, and it's a great theory, and many companies struggle to implement it. And so in many cases, the data is old. You have one person presenting their version of the truth, and that becomes accepted. And really, concurrent planning is about being able to pull together all of the stakeholders in the same platform, to look at the same data, to be there at the same time, and really to start to drive that decision-making based upon what's most important to the business. You're observing the circumstances, they happen, you're orienting yourself around what those potential impacts are, and then you're making fast, confident decisions about your business, about your supply chain, and then you can act on it. And it's really a process by which it's a bit more sense and respond and it's a bit more dynamic where you're seeing real time what's happening into the business and really putting yourself in the position to know kind of from that menu of options that when things go wrong or when opportunities present themselves, how you'll react. And that's where supply chains have this opportunity to really extend their value creation for the entire business, is to make the best possible decision every possible moment. It's not necessarily about chasing the perfect forecast, but it's about being able to understand in that moment what you're going to do based upon the information you have, and then to do it repeatedly, to act with agility and give yourself a chance to actually make those good decisions and take action that creates value.
Let's see if we can make this a little bit more concrete. Can you give me an example of an exception that might occur that needs to be resolved quickly, and the kind of information that would be available in concurrent planning to make a more optimal decision rather than just a rules-based decision?
Sure. I mean, certainly you'd look at, COVID is a very easy one. I mean, we've seen a number of instances where suppliers have shut down. We've seen lead times extend. We've seen different types of environments where you don't necessarily know those things without the ability of technology to really put the information in front of you. So if you're seeing your lead time extend by double, and you're starting to understand that the gaps that exist within your supply and demand reconciliation, it then becomes paramount on your business to decide what to do about it. You can't just wait because you'll run out of supply. You can't necessarily treat everything as equal. So concurrent planning is really looking at what is most important to your business. What are those critical supplies that must go out to a patient, perhaps somebody that's waiting for something in a life sciences environment. Those customers that are in critical need of your supply. Well, this will allow you to understand just how much you have in that moment based upon the information that's available and just how much you can get out the door. And it gives you that chance to really assess real time, as opposed to saying simply, this was our supply plan, this was our demand plan, it didn't match up. It's a bit more of an interactive process where you can bring in the stakeholders to make recommendations, and then you can execute it in that moment. It's a quick process. It's an ongoing repetitive process where you're really understanding that there's impact that's associated. You pull that single thread, well, it has implications across your entire supply chain. Depending on what circumstance you're looking at, it may vary, and it's really that chance for everybody to look at that in a given moment.
Well, thank you, Patrick. I think this was an excellent discussion, and I think you brought some light to some concepts that are important. Thank you very much.